Welcome to the Focus with Javon Adams. You can call me Jay or J Love. Do this thing weekly. And now, since people want to try to talk to me a little bit, they're interested in chopping it up with me a little bit. Maybe I'll be able to go back to that twice a week. But make sure you tell a friend and tell a friend about what I have going on here. I appreciate you listening, whether it's for a moment or the whole thing. Share it with a friend. My goal is always to provide insights and be able to kind of spur some thought and maybe give a little bit of motivation as well. YouTube, focusnowtalk.com, all those types of things. Make sure you check it out and tell a friend to tell a friend. Subscribe to the newsletter. If you go to focusnowtalk.com, subscribe. That way you'll be notified as soon as it hits your inbox. But I'm blessed to have this gentleman on. He's a friend of mine, but came about through, we met because of our sons, but we're friends, and I learn a lot from him. He gives me inspiration and motivation. He is a business owner himself. He is an entrepreneur. I wanted to have him on. It's long overdue. And, the one and only MarkTwain Beaver from True Narrative Media. What is good, my brother?
I'm doing great. How about yourself, man? I hope you're having a eventful week and look, just trying to stay busy and be productive and pass along any knowledge I can to people along the way like yourself. And hey, you do the same with me. Hey, it's about sharing back and forth. Sharing is caring, right?
Yes, indeed. You know how that goes. You know exactly how that goes.
Yeah.
So let's get into it because I want to have a discussion with. I had my cousin on recently, and just having conversations with entrepreneurs, people who are doing it, people who are rolling up their sleeves. It's
Mhm.
not. I'm sure that we both went to college, and you have those professors that have never done it, but they're trying to tell you how to do it, and then you have those
Right.
folks that do it, and they can give you some insight and just some encouragement, or to tell you where to look for some of those potholes. So first, before we get started, truenarrativemedia.com. But what is True Narrative Media?
So just the gist of it is like, we help companies tell impactful stories through the power of video, innovative storytelling for forward thinking companies. So we try to stay ahead of the curve and make it like a one-stop shop. More so than anything to say, hey, if you have an idea, our goal is to bring it to life, but also at the same time, you know, if it's that idea, how can we help you tell that story in such an impactful way to where it resonates with your audience? So that's really our goal here at True Narrative Media, deliver on that promise.
And how long have you had? Because I know it's been a couple iterations, but in terms of True Narrative
Oh
Media,
yeah.
just in the whole, how long have you been in business in this way?
So officially since 2019, but active since 2015.
Hmm.
Weird scenarios because I started off in the world of basketball to start.
Right.
Small tidbit, I was traveling with a really close friend of mine, Jamal Edwards, with TaylorMade Prep, and traveling with his team, recording the games, and then it started to me, doing documenting the young men that was trying to get those college opportunities. And what we found out in that process is that those small stories behind the scene things, along with the footage of them playing against other college basketball teams for their prep year, created opportunities for them to get scholarships to go to college, which was pretty cool. And that blew up into another cool thing where then Chris Oliver from Basketball Immersion, which was his college basketball coach over in Canada when Jamal was going to school over there at Windsor College, he reached out to Jamal's like, hey, who's doing your content and stuff? Like, I'm loving everything I'm seeing. So then that turned into a relationship where I was then traveling to like, Alabama University, go film private practices for them, then going to Bethel College and going to that university, which that was a D2 college. So, and then of course, COVID always stirs up some cool, some weird things for people like myself. So
Right. Right.
but at the same time, I was finding in that journey that I was liking documenting and seeing the stories of people and sort of putting those things together to help them. So then I started to switch gears to go corporate. And that's when I had to say, hey, well, everybody knows MTV Productions for basketball.
Okay.
What are you going to do? And then at that point, I was like, you know what? I had to go through the whole digging of names, a bunch of, different iterations of concepts and designs with those names, doing the research and all that stuff online through the state to make sure those names weren't taken. And
Yep.
then I settled on true narrative media because the biggest thing was me is storytelling, telling someone's narrative, and that just sort of stuck with me. So that's what it's been since then, and the journey has been great. Has it been easy? No, but it's a fun one. I enjoy it every day, waking up doing that for sure.
Now, so you touched on something there. So you mentioned in terms of the journey to get you here. So let me ask you this: along the way, because there are a lot of any line of business that you have,
Hmm.
you can have different levels of competition, right? So
Right.
did you ever have to fight any, as people often say, imposter syndrome, or as you're trying to build up your skill set
Hmm.
to really feel that this is what you can do and you're better than the next person? Did you, or is that something that you dealt with?
So I would say it's easy to like watch other people. Like, say for instance, I was part of a group which I still follow to this day, which is like Flash Film Academy. There's a gentleman by the name of Ty Turner that has Flash Film Media, his company out in Texas. He makes five figures easily and does well working with big corporations. So he was a big inspiration during the pandemic for me. But it was hard to say if I was gonna fall into what we call imposter syndrome, right? I can say I had a case of it because then you're looking at someone else's blueprint in a sense,
Right,
and then you're not really realizing sometimes you have to really make it your own, take that blueprint and those small pieces from it to
right,
start to make it your own. So it finally came to a realization where I followed the important things like, dealing with beta clients, stuff like that, to sort of get an idea and say, hey, how am I going to get my feet wet with dealing with corporate clients to be able to shoot a promotional video, or even doing things like cool when I was working with like you and Ed, going through the process of doing things for the radio show with Easy Sports Talk and all of that. Those were all areas of opportunities where it's like, okay, well, I want to be in a live streaming arena. I love that. Okay, I want to deal with corporations to be able to shoot videos and things for them to be able to tell their story. That's all of them are segues to ways for somebody to tell their story or their narrative. So, and then also doing events. So doing, getting with the Chamber of Commerce, the Southwest Chamber of Commerce, doing a lot of things with them, networking again, doing things with bigger companies, cool things like we did with Pepsi. We did some Raising Cane's. We did some ribbon cutting ceremonies and stuff with like Staples.
yeah,
And then we had like a renewable power company that we did some things with Power Plus, which went very well for a groundbreaking ceremony out in Avondale. So it's, the maturation of things is great. But to answer your question, yes, imposter syndrome is very possible. It's easy to fall into, what you see someone doing, and you don't want to be that person that envies that, and you don't want to be a copycat to a T, because you have to be original in your own way. But also, it's like the law of gravity. What really pulls you in what direction, and taking that opportunity to like to realize that. And I think that's what I found through, you know, the good and the bad and the ugly of things, of sort of making my way and networking with different people and doing different projects with different businesses. And you found to say, hey, you know what? I settled in on these three things. Now is podcasting, which is really heavy and a big part of the service that we do here at True Narrative Media. There's also now still that storytelling half if we need to do any video production needs for a corporate video, explainer, instruction, video, or even educational at that point. So, and training video. So we do those things too. And like I said, live streaming. Those are my three key things.
where were you, let's say 3 years ago, when it came to, if somebody comes to you and says, I want you to make a video for me, right? And
Hmm.
they say, and you ask them, okay, what do you want? And they say, I don't know, and you have to come
Those
up
are
with it. So
so.
where are you at now as opposed to where you were then? Do you kind of come in mind all of a sudden, start to have some things in mind in case they don't have an idea, or in
Mhm.
case their idea is kind of garbage?
Well, look, I have come across some that's definitely been across it with the call where you call it garbage in a sense, right? But
Right.
the reality of it is being understanding if they say, hey, okay, finding out what is the problem that they're trying to solve. Because if we're not getting to that, then there's no reason for us to create anything. What problem are you trying to solve, or what question are you trying to answer with this content and things that we're going to be creating for you?
Yeah.
You know, what's the goal in mind? If we can't get there, then we're wasting each other's time. And I'm gonna be open and honest and upfront anyways and say, hey, you know what, it sounds like you still need to think about it. What I would say is, hey, what's the top 3 things, if you could sit here right now at this point in time on a hierarchy from greatest of importance to least of importance, that you need to do right now to move in a direction that you want to go in, so we can start to work on that, and then we can evolve the other things along the way. So it's just sort of like building a pyramid, if you think, or building a house.
I like that. I like that. So again, we got MarkTwain Beaver from True Narrative Media here on Focus with Javon Adams. Best advice that you've received. Best advice that you've received. If there's more than one bit of advice that you received, but what's the best advice that you've received so far on this journey?
I would say, more than anything, I think being yourself, versus being somebody or a facade that you're not. Being your natural self, because I think we're in that day and age at this point in time, honestly, people can see through the red tape real easy and say, man, okay, he's full of BS, or whatever you want to call it, right? Or, you know, I think they're being genuine, I think, in your actions, and who you are, but also any promises. You can under promise and always over deliver, and then it's hard to say over promise and then you don't deliver, right?
Right.
And it fall flat, and you're like, what in the world did I set myself up for? So I think, you know, staying in that fine line of things, I think people can resonate with that more than anything, and it makes sense for both parties involved when y'all come to some form of agreement and align with what the mission is at hand that you need to both accomplish with each other in that partnership.
So, with owning the pressure washing company that I own, because I want to ask you about the biggest challenge and the biggest success that you've had so far. But I remember when you talk about biting off more than you can chew, I went and I bid on to do some window cleaning at this spot in Litchfield Park. And I thought, oh, this job, 2.5 hours tops. Ask our partner Earl. You know, you met Earl before.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
Yes.
so I asked Earl, hey, can you roll with me? Cool. He says, how long it's going to be? I said, cool. It's going to be about 2.5 hours. We good. I grossly underestimated how long it would be based upon some little things. If I had just taken the time inside, I was doing the external windows. He was doing the inside windows. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. And I've always remembered that the way I bid the price. I bid it in very, very, I probably underbid myself. And then I also didn't give myself enough time. I thought it would take a certain amount of time. And that was one of the biggest mistakes that I've made. And I always remember that when I go in and bid on a job. But what about you? What's the biggest challenge, and even more so, what's the biggest success? I can think about seeing you with the things that you're, when you mentioned PepsiCo, just, what a couple months ago, seeing you do that, and the way in which I'm always impressed with your work, but to see the way in which that was pulled off, I thought you did a great job there. But what about you? What are some of your biggest, successes so far, and maybe your biggest challenge that you've had?
I'll probably start with like the challenge. I think like the biggest challenge for me is, and I personally went through, is like when I was going through that change and switch of trying to move into the corporate space, having that opportunity to have someone say, okay, I want to trust you in this moment, and we're going to partner together. And I'm talking about my beta client process that I went through, to dig and get the information, because it's really you going in and say, hey, I really need you to be able to help me in this instance. And this is what the product or service that I'm trying to build. I need your help to be able to do that. And then they're okay with saying, all right, we understand there's going to be some growing pains of a part of that. There's going to be some good things. There's going to be some bad things, but it's all a learning experience. But to refine the product where it makes sense to be able to deliver on it on a consistent basis. So it's easy to say, okay, when I deliver a proposal, I get those guidelines and everything and how we going to deliver on it. And I show examples of work that I've done previously. that beta client process taught me and built me up to that point to be able to easily produce that in that fashion and say, here, all right, this should make an easy decision for you. And okay, also want to find out why. If they say no, then okay, rejection is fine. Why? Because we want to continue to get better as a company here on our side. How can you help me do it? It's still asking for your help and the assistance. So it's getting people to be able to trust you in those moments when you're trying to build something, and let them understand the vision that you have to be able to serve other companies like theirs. I think that's probably the hardest part. And but now as things going along, um that was a challenge part, right? But now understanding how much the networking part of that really makes sense now too, because there was a point in time where I wasn't doing that and things could be stagnant, and you have to sort of ask yourself, well, why is this happening to me? You can't have a woe is me and crying party about why something isn't happening. You have to sit back and say, look at the person in the mirror and say, well, what is it that you're doing well and what you're not doing well? And also be able to take that criticism from other people that you worked with to find out, so you can fine tune things to make it that much better as you go along, because nothing's perfect in this world. You just have to try to refine it every time. It's a learning experience, good, bad, or indifferent.
I like that. I like that. So I got to ask, if you trying to pass on wisdom and you pass on wisdom to me, you just
Mhm.
helped me out with something just a couple of days ago. Things are starting to arrive over the next couple of days, and I'll be in there probably putting a table.
Hey.
I'll probably be putting a table together incorrectly in just a day or two, but the legs will be all kind of crazy in which way. But what are three bits of advice that you would give someone about starting or becoming successful as a business owner? Three bits of advice that you would give to somebody if they're thinking about starting on their own,
Mhm.
and even if you want to come from a perspective of, we black men up in this business too. But
Oh yeah.
what are three bits of advice?
I would have to say that the segue into, okay, us being African Americans, right? And trying to break into any form of industry. Yes, the multitude of work that you're gonna have to put in is gonna be some more trials and tribulations. I think that you go through that, but you can't let that be the chip on your shoulder in such a way to where it makes you want to turn away from what it is that you're going towards. I think the most important part of that is saying, hey, do when you wake up every day, what do you want? What are you passionate about? And what's the end goal? And whether, if you look at your family at the end of the day, like my wife, my son, and my daughter, right? What drives you? What's your passion? To be able to live a more abundant life where I have my time more free to be able to spend it with them, opposed to being hunkered down in the sense of working the 9 to 5, where I'm doing well enough and it's an influx of reoccurring business coming in to where I'm no longer doing that.
Right.
I think that's the goal. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, but then some people are okay with saying, "Hey, it's my side hustle," and that's okay too. If that works for you, you got to do what works for you. But there's
Right.
gonna become a point in time where you're gonna say, "Well, what do you really want?" So, number two, just to sort of go into things, is besides being yourself, be okay with doing the research and the homework, because what mass majority of people do not do is
Mhm.
take the time to do their research, and then they have no idea how much research is involved, and then you putting that research and things that you're doing into actionable items, and then executing those things. Even if it's like you biting the cookie and you trying to finish up a one big cookie, you ain't gonna finish it in one bite. Little bits and pieces. I don't care if it's a couple hours a day, you got to work towards whatever that goal is. So that would be my advice there. And then the third item would be, is, and I found in this, is that, and it's crazy to say this, I have family that supports me. I love them
Mm.
to death for those that do. But what
Yeah.
I'm finding in this entrepreneurial journey is that when it comes to family, the feedback can be skewed because they love you, right? They're
Mhm.
going to be your cheerleader and say, "Oh, that's great, that's awesome." But it's totally different when you give that to a total stranger of what you're thinking about doing, or showing them what you're doing, and you get an unbiased answer at that point, and you like, and it's an eye opener. Sometimes you like, whoa, I wasn't even thinking about it coming from that perspective.
Right.
And it helps you sort of dial things in and say, you know what? That's not who I'm going to go to and look for that feedback. It's going to be probably more some complete strangers or those beta clients that you have those relationships with as you continue to build things, or even the people, whether if it's interns that you're working with or people that you start to employ as you building it, their feedback is just as equally as important, because without
Yes.
that, it's nothing. The culture of your company is nothing if you're not living it every day and you're not speaking it and breathing it. Because people are gonna be like, man, you know what, man, I don't look, we got to shoot today with Mark Twain, and man, I can't stand that guy, man. I don't,
Yeah.
you don't want that, right? You want to
True.
be like, hey, man, I'm having fun while we coming to work and we going on a shoot. We serious in this moment on delivering what we need for a client, and then once we wrap it up and we're packing up equipment and stuff, we're taking moments and times to laugh. Man, did you see that? Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, man, I love how you did that. And then, or when we look at the whole project in its totality, and we're doing like editing sessions and stuff, and it's like, oh man, I love that, and taking everybody's input, because it's great to have so many different perspectives, but when everybody's on the same page, it's no jealousy involved. It's like everybody just got a common goal and they're passionate about what they're doing. So it's great when that's happening. That's would be the third and final item. Who, not how. Find y'all who's, y'all. Find your who's that had the gifts that you don't have, and appreciate them for their gifts. And all of y'all put y'all gifts together to make something great.
All right. We're going to leave it right at that. So TrueNarrativeMedia.com,
Yeah.
TrueNarrativeMedia.com. I can vouch for this man. I've seen him do work. I've seen him on the setups, the breakdowns. I've seen him just the little things that he's doing. And then when you see the finished product, you say, oh, that's why he was doing that. Oh, yeah, Jay, man,
Yeah.
that's why I was doing that. I was just right over here. That's why I went over here. That's why I moved over here just a little bit. You see just a little bit of a move. But TrueNarrativeMedia.com. Make sure you support this man. And so
Absolutely.
again, I do this once a week. So make sure you tell a friend about what I got going on here. FocusNowTalk.com. FocusNowTalk.com. Sign up for the newsletter. That way you get on that email list. And so every episode that comes out, it'll hit your inbox, and so you know it right there. But as I always like to say around this time, you can